Today you're going to hear from a number of speakers about this fight. But understand that this fight today for a new Iran is being fought by a group of dissidents on the front line of this fight to free their homeland. These dissidents are now trapped between a world of Ashraf and a hellhole of Camp Liberty. Question about whether the United States is going to fulfill its obligation to the people that it made a promise to and fulfill its obligation to live up to the values that it stands for. And the United States cannot fulfill that obligation while it's denying the opportunity for the people of Camp Liberty and Camp Ashraf to live safe, to have their lives protected, and to be afforded some of the most basic human necessities that anybody anywhere in the world would associate with respect for human life and human rights. When the United States stands on the sidelines and lets the mullahs in Tehran have their way, the United States is giving the green light for the denial of human rights in Camp Liberty and Camp Ashraf. It may also be about the specter of nuclear weapons in Iran, but make no mistake about it. We're never going to see a resolution to the crisis in Iran with nuclear weapons if we do not first decide as a country whose side we're going to stand on. Secretary of State Clinton's agreement, where she put the reputation of the United States of America on paper as being committed. Let me read you the words. We commend the Secretary of State Clinton, the government of Iraq, for its work with the United Nations Special Representative, Ambassador Martin Kobler, and welcome this important step towards humane resolution of the ongoing situation in Camp Ashraf. Secretary of State goes on. In signing this memorandum of understanding, this represents significant progress on the issue and outlines the necessary steps to achieve a peaceful, viable solution for the residents of Ashraf, including their, quote, temporary relocation to Camp Liberty. We are encouraged. This is the United States' reputation on the line now. This is the country that fought a war to put this current government in Iraq in place, saying that we are encouraged by the way that the Iraqi government has treated the residents of Camp Liberty. Does this look like it upholds the reputation of this United States of America? Does this look like the kind of agreement that is truly honors the values of our country? I don't think so. When you've got 140-degree temperature, you're not allowing people potable water. You're not giving them the electricity or the shade to protect themselves. You're putting them in a camp that makes a prison look good. Under these situations, and then blame them for not moving out of Camp Ashraf in time, I think blames the victim. The real culpable party here is the failure of Iraq, the UN, and the U.S. to uphold. I want to blame the United Nations, but today we're in the United States. And the United Nations would, I believe, be doing a different job if the signal out of the United States was, we want you to make sure you stand up for the residents of Camp Ashraf and Camp Liberty, And that is why we're here in our nation's capital to call on our government and the State Department to send a message to the United Nations and the rest of the world that we stand with the opposition to the mullahs in Tehran. We don't stand with the mullahs in Tehran, and the way you show that is stand up for the residents of Camp Ashraf and Camp Liberty.
Ambassador Martin Kobler, the real failure is the failure by the UN High Commissioner for Refugees in many respects. The first is that just inexplicably to me, UNHCR appears to be taking its orders from Ambassador Kobler. This is fundamentally inconsistent with the whole rationale for creating an independent agency devoted to refugees. The people who created the High Commissioner's Office decades ago understood that refugee problems have inherently political ramifications. But what they wanted to do was to create an international organization whose mission was the protection and assistance of the refugees themselves, divorced from whatever political context the refugee situation arose in. What that meant was that the High Commissioner had to be independent of the political pulls and tugs within the UN system, independent of the Security Council, independent of the UN General Assembly, but most importantly, independent of the governments that were involved. And it was the obligation, particularly of the United States and the other countries that were behind the creation of the High Commissioner's Office, to protect that independence. Because if the High Commissioner for Refugees can't give protection and assistance to refugees, nobody else can. And what we've seen here in this entire transfer process from Ashraf to Liberty is the subordination of UNHCR to the UN mission in Iraq. And that is a fundamental violation of the principles for which UNHCR was established. Everybody understood that refugee situations were difficult for all of the participants. But by allowing the High Commissioner to act simply as an agent for Ambassador Kobler, we have eviscerated the whole rationale for the UN's participation in the protection mission.
One other point that I really want to chime in on here, separate from the nuclear issue, and let's not talk about nukes for a little while here, is the issue of the MEK and the people at Ashraf and the people now that have been relocated to some other name than Camp Ashraf. My time as the vice chairman was a time where each morning I got up and I wondered, after a night of partial sleep, where the 2.5 million men and women of the military were that day, what they needed. But when you decide what it is you want to do, you make sure that somebody is assigned to be responsible and accountable to ensure that it happens. Having people in charge of humanitarian issues, having people in charge of transporting and characterizing are interesting things and important. Having somebody assigned to ensure relocation occurs is what the mission is. Don't take your eye off the mission. Who is it? Don't hide behind titles. Who is assigned and who is accountable? And until there is somebody in that position, we're not serious. We need to be serious.
In 2009, U.S. soldiers were forced to stand idly by while many members of the resistance were gunned down and murdered by a supposed Iraqi democratic regime. That is after we, the U.S. forces, convinced the members of the resistance that everything's going to be okay once we turn you over to the Iraqis. Don't worry. When in fact we knew we were throwing them to the wolves. That's not politically correct, is it? Well, we promised them a rose garden, knowing there was no rose garden at Camp Liberty. Any wonder why the people at Camp Ashraf doubt our sincerity? They doubt the fact that we've promised them humane treatment. They doubt the fact that we're going to give them refugee status. How many have been at Liberty now for over 6 months? And not one have been repatriated any place. Where did the protected persons label go? Confusing to say the least. We promised every member, all 3,400, protection in writing, and they believed us. Yet in 2009, we were nigged on that promise, and they paid with blood. Where was our honor in that? Interestingly, it was the State Department that told then Lieutenant Colonel McCloskey, remove the protected person verbiage from their identity cards. Any new cards issued, and they were issued periodically, remove it. Ironically, that was within days before the attack by the Iraqis on these people who were unarmed. So, any doubt, any wonder why the people at Ashraf doubt the promises that moving to liberty is a good thing? I believe you learn from experience. In the case of the Iranian resistance, what do you suspect they've learned from their experience in dealing with us?
The government of Iraq is a fair and just democratic government. The government that perpetrated these 2 assaults. A government that has thrown every roadblock up to decent transition from Ashraf to liberty. First of all, I've never gotten a good explanation from the State Department or anybody representing the government of Iraq or from the United Nations why, if the ultimate goal was to get the residents of Ashraf out of the country, why they have to leave Ashraf to do that in the first place. Had we stayed in Ashraf, we would have been far ahead of where we are now. We wasted all this time transitioning to liberty. Nobody's ever given me an explanation. And then, nobody's ever given me an explanation. What's the big deal? Why don't the Iraqi government allow us to put up shade or to put up paved walkways? We're not asking them to pay the money. Why would you not do that? Why would you not let the residents bring their own water purification system and pump water out of the nearby river when it's at no cost to them and the residents of Ashraf now Liberty are willing to do it themselves? And they can do it in a few days. What's the problem? What's the problem with letting the disabled that are in Liberty have their own vehicles and their own trailers? Is that a security risk? I mean, no one's ever explained to me why the government of Iraq has put up roadblock after roadblock after roadblock in making this a smooth and fair and decent and humanitarian transition. Nobody's ever explained anything to me. And I think it's rotten. And I think it's unfair. And I think in many ways it borders on inhumane. And it makes you angry. And I know it makes you angry because you have relatives and friends over there. I don't know anybody by name over there, but it makes me angry. It makes me angry as an American, and it makes me angry as a citizen of the world. And it's amazing to me why our own State Department won't allow Colonel Martin and General Phillips, who are commanders of Ashraf, who have relationships with the people of Ashraf, why they won't allow the 2 of them to go over for 2 purposes. One, so we can have an independent evaluation of what conditions are in Liberty. But 2, just as importantly, that they can talk to the residents. Because the residents have an information gap too, and they can tell them what's going on and what the stakes are. But we need to move. We need to move. We can fight, and we win battles one by one. They didn't let the 4th and 5th Convoy bring their personal items. We fought hard for that in our weekly meeting with Freed, Ambassador Freed, when we got the personal items sent in the cargo convoy that went over the weekend. We got air conditioners. We got some generators, not enough, but some generators. Temporary transition is a joke, because we know even if the process goes well, people are going to be there for another 6, 9, 12, 15 months. It's not temporary transition, it's really a refugee camp. And John, the UN should be embarrassed because it refuses to call it a refugee camp when we know that's exactly what it is.
The number one security concern for the United States, I believe, is an extremist terrorist with a nuclear weapon that could stand for what we believe in, what we grew up as, what I grew up as, and continue to act that way. Idealistically, we need to take care of friends that have common interests like you around the world. You're just like we are. You have the same rights. We owe it to you to help with Camp Ashraf and liberty for that matter. We have to stand up for who we are as Americans and live for what we believe in, then we're just not going to be American anymore. So I believe we'll stand with you, and I believe you'll succeed in your goal. Thank you.
We have multiple types of intelligence. We have signal intelligence. We have human intelligence. I have continually watched our government use rumor intelligence. And this is precisely what the entire MEK and the National Liberation Army has endured for decades, and it's time for somebody to speak for them and address some of these rumors and make clear they are nothing more than rumors and actually much worse than we'll discuss. Of breaking away from the rumors and trying to appease the mullahs of Iran, the U.S. executive branch creates more rumors and attack on the defenders. Ambassador Benjamin speculated to Congress that Ashraf had been searched, still needed to be searched for weapons. 2 weeks later, that speculation intelligence was presented as a fact at the Court of Appeals. Fortunately, all of us together were able to quickly disprove that one. And if we had no access to Ashraf, then where did I take all these pictures? Dave Phillips, Colonel Mikulski, and I had complete 100% access to Ashraf, and it was given to us. I had the Marines and the soldiers. We could take it whenever we wanted to, but we didn't need to. The doors were always open, and we could go where we wanted to, when we wanted to. General Phillips, you agree?